Baiklah, seterusnya di bawah Perjanjian Paris, lebih 190 negara bersetuju mengekalkan tahap pemanasan global di bawah 2 darjah Celsius. Ia menerusi usaha mengehadkan kepada 1.5 darjah Celsius yang disifatkan oleh saintis akan membantu mengelakkan kesan paling buruk perubahan iklim. Di bawah Perjanjian Paris juga negara kaya bersetuju menyalurkan dana sebanyak $100 bilion Amerika setiap tahun kepada negara yang lebih miskin untuk menyokong tindakan dan adaptasi berkaitan perubahan iklim bermula pada 2020. Namun, ia merupakan komitmen yang tidak pernah dipenuhi. Dan untuk mengulas lanjut mengenai isu ini, berada di talian ketika ini adalah Pemangku Ketua Pembangunan Lestari dan Mampan UNDP, Gan Pek Chuan. Apa khabar, Pek Chuan?
Selamat petang dan salam sejahtera. Khabar baik.
Bagus. Baik. Saya terus saja kepada fokus saya yang pertama. Jadi, apakah kemajuan yang sudah dicapai oleh Malaysia khususnya untuk memenuhi komitmen yang digarap menerusi Perjanjian Paris ini, Pek Chuan?
I think Malaysia's progress towards its commitments, izinkan saya bertutur dalam bahasa Inggeris.
Baik.
In the Paris Agreement can be seen and also interpreted in different ways. So first is the level of ambition ataupun dikenali sebagai tahap komitmen. Malaysia's updated and also and increased its climate ambition in its nationally determined contribution in July 2021 by stating it will reduce an economic-wide carbon intensity against GDP of 45% by 2030 compared to 2005 levels, without condition on climate finance, technology transfer, and capacity support from developed countries. So this is considered a very substantial level out of ambition made to Malaysia's nationally determined contribution, or otherwise known as the NDC, which was originally submitted to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change back in 2015, which is actually following after the Paris Agreement. So what does it mean? So in summary, it represents a 10% increase in ambition. And currently Malaysia, according to the recently launched 12 Malaysia Plan, we have achieved 29.4 reduction in greenhouse gas emissions intensity per unit of GDP by end of 2016. But of course, if you use a net emissions or absolute greenhouse gas emission as a measurement, then you'll see Malaysia actually seen an increasing trends of GHG emissions from 1990 to 2020. And this is, and then the highest emission sector is actually energy, followed by waste sector. So which means if you use the net emission as an indicator, and as you know now, the world is now raising and encouraging all the member states and countries to adopt net zero emissions targets by 2050, because we need to limit the increase of global temperature down by 2 degrees Celsius. So if you see that from that angle, then Malaysia is on an increasing trend. But nevertheless, why Malaysia has adopted emission intensity per GDP is because Malaysia is still a developing countries on our transition. So which is why we still need to have our social economic development. So to balance this commitment, which is why we adopted this particular measurement indicator. Second is the sets of policies. So as you know, Malaysia has quite a comprehensive sets of policy ranging from different sectors, which are environmental based. So you have the national energy policy, you have the feed-in tariff, you have the national forest policy. But the question is, comprehensive policy requires also a concerted effort to a very strong commitment to implement and enforce. So this comes down to the third view or third perspective, which is on implementation capacity. So with the comprehensive sets of policy like 12 Malaysia Plan or the recently announced budget speech, Budget 2022 last Friday. So do we have the institutional capacity or the consistent political will to see that policies are coherently implemented across different sectors. Because this is something quite critical in terms of Malaysia's progress towards its commitments. Thank you.
Okey, itu antara yang diberikan oleh Pek Chuan sendiri. Tapi Pek Chuan, saya nak meneruskan kepada soalan yang kedua Pek Chuan, sebab mungkin as you were saying just now, meaning to say that Malaysia is in good position to achieve the mission of Paris Agreement. Tapi saya nak fokuskan kepada antara rundingan awal Perjanjian Paris ini juga menetapkan kepentingan mengambil pendekatan akses yang saksama kepada ruang atmosfera, ataupun dalam perjanjian tersebut ada menyatakan bahawa equitable access to atmospheric space approach dengan mempertimbang historical and current emission oleh setiap negara secara kumulatif juga dibincang. Namun perkara ini mendapat tentangan daripada negara maju seperti Amerika Syarikat. Jadi bagaimana dengan kelangsungan COP26 UN Climate Change Conference ketika ini mampu mencapai satu kesepakatan setiap negara anggota yang untuk merealisasikan perjanjian ini, dan ianya bukan sekadar di atas kertas, Pek Chuan?
Yes, this will always be a contention point because under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, common but differentiated approach, which means that historical emissions admitted by the developed nations, like we call it the Annex 1 countries like US, United States, United Kingdoms, mainly are all the OECD countries. They are supposed to take more responsibilities towards not just in terms of their absolute GHG emission reduction, but also expect them to provide support. That means in terms of ODA, or we call the development assistance to all the developing countries, because as developing countries are developing, are on their trajectory to ensure its countries are developed at the states similar or on par to the developed status, then obviously they still need to broaden their economic sectors and industrial base. So in order for developing countries, if let's say to forego some of this industrial expansion, then by right under the common but differentiated approach is developed countries should provide the support, technology transfer, and also climate finance. That means a lot of financial support to the countries to ensure they actually transition into a cleaner and greener economy approach rather than still falling back to the fossil fuel based economy.
Baiklah, itu dia tadi. Terima kasih Pemangku Ketua Pembangunan Lestari dan Mampan UNDP Gan Pek Chuan atas perkongsian tersebut yang menyentuh mengenai Perjanjian Paris dan komitmen Malaysia dalam merealisasikan perjanjian tersebut.